Hi, thanks for joining us for this training on reporting and identifying harmful algal blooms. I'm Sarah Erwin from Utah State University Extension. My role is I get to facilitate water quality stewardship programs and watershed education programs. So I get to work with a lot of our volunteers and our youth groups throughout the state. And one of the things we do is we have HAB Squad. And HAB Squad helps the state. We have more boots on the ground to be able to identify when we have harmful algal blooms and get those reported more quickly. And then our partner agencies, the Division of Water Quality, as well as county health departments, can know that there may be problems that they haven't noticed yet and can go look into those when it's deemed appropriate. So today we have Ellen Bailey, and she's going to share with us just how to identify, how to recognize HABs, and the protocols that they would like us to use in doing this. So thanks, Ellen.
Everybody, thanks for joining. Okay, yeah, we appreciate your interest in harmful algal blooms. My name is Ellen Bailey. I work for the Division of Water Quality, and I oversee our monitoring for the program, and we work around the state. So just quickly, the topics that I want to cover are some harmful algal bloom basics. What is a harmful algal bloom? Why do they form? What are some things to be aware of? And how to ID a harmful algal bloom. Also, we need your help. We do statewide monitoring. We try to track water conditions as much as possible. And so then how can you help with this? Just to get all on the same page, there's a lot of terminology out there where I usually refer to harmful algal blooms, or HABs, but you might also hear cyanoHABs, HCBs, blue-green algae, toxic algae, and more scientifically, cyanobacteria. If you hear these things, we're probably all talking about the same thing. Here's the picture from Utah Lake. And doesn't look like there's a HAB present, but HABs, harmful algal blooms, are present in most bodies of water. It's a natural thing. They're naturally occurring. They've been around since life originated. But here, so we did take a sample, and there was a very small amount in the tens of cells per mil of cyanobacteria. However, there's conditions that occur where it facilitates a really good situation for harmful algal blooms to blossom, to grow, create a bloom. One of those is hot temperatures. So on hot, sunny days, there's more opportunity. They start to thrive. So we start to see them more into the later summer and even into the fall when the water is still warm. Additionally, nutrient pollution. As more nutrients are added, that's lots of food, and they just feed on that, and that helps to facilitate those harmful algal blooms also. Nutrient pollution comes from all sorts of sources. The sewage that discharges into, not direct sewage, or even just from the treatment plants, industrial discharge, anything that's running off of the land, from farms, livestock, sediment erosion from our streams. There's natural levels of nutrients in the sediments. How we manage our roadways, or hydrologic and habitat modifications that are made. These can all contribute nutrients to our streams and lakes. Additionally, there's other nutrient pollution that we maybe have a little bit more direct impact on. Any nutrients or fertilizers that we might add to our lawns, clogged storm drains, or leaves and things that get into the storm drains, those all go downstream. And anything running off of the land, the roads, can end up in our streams. Septic systems, if they're not maintained, might leak. Also, some detergents and soaps have phosphorus in them that can get into our waterways. And pet waste, being responsible and picking that up also helps to keep nutrients from getting into our waterways. So again, back to our Utah lake here, it was looking good. But then we had a lot of warm weather, hot sun. Cyanobacteria is a photosynthesizing bacteria. So that's why the sunlight, similar to other things like such as phytoplankton that grows in the lake, it needs that sun to produce energy. Moving on, we've added the hot temperatures and nutrient pollution. And now we're seeing cells in the millions cells per mil of cyanobacteria. And here we're starting to see them as little globules, but this is starting to be a concern, and it's starting to dominate other types of growth in the lake. So what's the problem with this? Well, it disrupts the ecosystem. So there's naturally occurring other types of phytoplankton that might live in these lakes. But when the harmful algal blooms come in, they dominate and they take over. And so it's hard for them. They have characteristics that make them more dominant. They can move in the water column, and they can fix their own nitrogen. And so just these factors that they have makes them really take over. And that can, affect the balance of the system. Also, producing a lot. When they're producing a lot, the oxygen, they can consume a lot of oxygen. That's when you see a lot of fish kills potentially because of that. Not necessarily due to toxins that they might produce, but the ecosystem is affected, and the oxygen levels that the animals breathe can be affected. Also, it is a concern for human and animal health. And that's kind of one of the main things that we think about. They may produce cyanotoxins. And the thing about them is they don't always produce toxins, but they have that potential. And so we monitor to see, when they're present, it's best to assume that toxins might be there. And these can cause, just the cells themselves can cause gastrointestinal illness, but then more severe health effects come from the toxins that they can produce. And those can be liver toxins or neurological toxins, and these can create really severe health effects and in really extreme levels, potentially even death. Also, I just want to note that the kids, young children, and pets animals are generally the most susceptible to those toxins. And then again, similar to what we just talked about, this can hurt the economy and recreation when these are present. People don't want to visit the water bodies, and so there's that issue with the economy. And so that's a problem. We want people to be able to get out and go. And so those are what we're thinking about. Also, we are starting to see more water bodies with HABs. Some of it is we're looking a lot closer than we used to, but we are seeing a trend on the upward scale. And here's a graph showing how we've monitored water bodies that we've monitored in the last since 2016 and that trend. So now you're here for the HAB Squad, and maybe you're interested in learning and participating more. How can you safely enjoy Utah's waters? That we're getting into kind of what we're doing here. Before you go out, it's good to check conditions on habs.utah.gov so that you know and can be informed and knowledgeable about what might be present. Also, just knowing how to spot those harmful algal blooms, and you can find that on our website. We'll talk about it, and then there's a lot of really great information there as well. And then also being informed about what are activities that are safe to do or not to do when those are present. No swimming in the water that appears to have a bloom. Also, Avoid boating, tubing, water skiing, jet skiing on scummy water. If you go take a boat through those scums, it can aerosolize the bloom, and that can be harmful to the health. Children and pets are the most susceptible, and so keeping them out of playing in that scummy water is definitely key. And then if you do notice something, report it through your normal HAB squads, and you can also call our this phone line, 801-536-4123, and that'll allow you to report a bloom, but best to know to report that only if it's something that's not known. And you can find that on habs.utah.gov. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's, yeah, being informed, knowing what to look for, and knowing what activities are safe to do when that's present. So, getting to the brunt of what we're talking about, how do we tell if it's cyanobacteria? Well, HABs have this particular feature that they've got these phycocyanins, and that gives it that blue-green color, why it's called blue-green algae. And you can see from this picture, it kind of almost has that blue-green kind of color. And this is a really thick scum along the shoreline. And so I'm just going to go through a few different photos, some examples of what it can look like. And it can really be rather diverse, and it can be really extreme, or it can be on a little more, less on the less extreme scale. So on the left here, there's one, and again, very blue, again, with those, that blue-green algae. You can see, yeah, it's dense. It looks kind of too like spilled paint, and you see all sorts of colors present. Another one on the top right photo, there's just little globules that are collecting along the shore in the rocks. On the bottom, there's a picture there with it looks like little grass clippings, and it really looks like grass clippings if somebody had mowed the lawn and dispersed little clips into the water. It's really interesting, but that's what they can what one kind can look like. And then the one next to that, it's just on the surface, and it can look like little streaks on the water, just green. Some more pictures. Here's one. Again, we're seeing some of those streaks. It's pretty dense. It's got both globules and that streaky color. Pretty dense bloom there. Another thing on the top right, you might go out and the water looks fine, but you can see that there's this blue ring on the shoreline, and that indicates that there was a bloom recently. Maybe it's moved along, maybe it's still there too, but that's evidence of a recent bloom. The bottom photo is showing some globules, and you can see it's pretty dense in the water still there. And so there's a lot of different forms that these blooms can take. Some more on the left, there's a scum on the right side of the photo. It's clear to the left, but it's just kind of pushed along to the shoreline. This top one has a really thin layer. It's just of green, just really right at the surface. And then, yeah, another really colorful one on the bottom, with very swirly. But there's a lot of different appearances. Photos are great to take a picture of, and you can see on our website some more examples. There are some lookalikes, some imposters that can give you you want to make sure to give a second look. Duckweed is one of these, and some other aquatic plants. You take a look at this picture on the left, and that sure looks like a scum of harmful algal bloom scum. But you look closer, and you can actually pick out that there's individual little leaves on the surface. And so this is actually not cyanobacteria, but a little aquatic plant. And so, yeah, it might cover the surface, be pretty dense, but if you look really close, it has little roots. And so one thing to look for, Does it have roots or leaves? If so, you can rule out cyanobacteria, harmful algal blooms. The next imposter is filamentous green algae. This is a really fibrous algae and it's harmless, but you look at this picture, that does on first glance, it looks concerning. It has, it's up at the surface. Well, there's a cool tool you can try. And I think we're gonna try a video. So if you go and grab a stick, you can try and poke at it, not using your fingers or hands with the stick. And if it hangs down really fibrous, then it's filamentous green algae and it's not concerning. Oops. So here's another picture, or well, more static picture, close up of the stick test. Again, showing you if you poke at it and it's hanging down really fibrous, we've got filamentous green algae and it's not concerning. It's a natural algae that is harmless in the water. So that stick test is really powerful, really helpful. So then what happens? It's not filamentous green algae, it's not duckweed. Well, in that case, it may be best just to assume that it's safest, maybe to assume then that it could be a harmful algae and to be more cautious around it. One thing I want to clarify, we've been talking about planktonic harmful algae. So that means it grows in the water column. It forms those surface gums and it prefers standing water and they can produce toxins. Another form that's emerging more and we're starting to see and learn more about it, is benthic harmful algae. And we call these harmful algae mats. And they really are, they grow very differently and they look very differently. And unfortunately, they're also more difficult to identify. But they're concerned and want to make sure that you understand the difference between those. These are generally more in flowing water, but we also see them in some lakes as well. Here's a picture of some of this, and it's really a globule mucousy bacteria, cyanobacteria, and it has these. Generally, it's green or brown, and so this one has this really vibrant green color, and it's also that mucousy texture, and it grows on sediment and rocks, and on plants occasionally as well. And so, yeah, in that second picture, you can see it growing on the surface of the rocks. Here's another example in some flowing water. And this one, it's a little more ribbed, but it's pretty thick and brown, mucousy glob algae attached to that rock. Another example here is in a lake where it's the concern about these are when they pop up off of those rocks and they become buoyant and float potentially into areas where people or pets or animals are recreating. And this one, you can tell it's right in the middle here, and it's a little darker, vibrant green, and again, has that globulary, mucousy texture. You can use the stick test similar to that filamentous green algae. And so if they break apart, they don't form that fibrosy texture, then it's potentially could be a cyanobacteria and best to treat it as that to be on the safe side. And so back to needing your help. So we talked a little bit about why they're forming, what they might look like, and at the state we try to inform people around for the entire state, and so we need help with some extra eyes on the water bodies and provide some information. We generally have 20 sites that we routinely visit monthly, that we know have had issues or routinely have issues. And so monitoring some of these, you can help us prioritize where we're able to visit. Also, but really any water body in Utah, we definitely, if recreation is occurring, want to know what's happening out there. So it's all really helpful information. I mentioned our website before, habs.utah.gov, and here's kind of some information you can find on there. We have a map that shows the sites that we're monitoring. And again, we can't get to everywhere, but we do show what we know. So we can share that it looks good, or if there is something concerning here, we've got a health watch showing, and it shows you too what activities are recommended. And before you go out to a water body, recommend to check this out. Also, if you're going to report anything, this is a good place to find to know if it's already been reported, in which case it doesn't need to be reported again. So again, you get to somewhere and it does have those HABs. We've ruled out with a stick test. We're pretty, feel pretty good that we might have a HAB present. Check out those photos. There's lots more pictures on our website at habs.utah.gov and become more familiar with what they might look like. Photos and locations are really helpful. We can rule out a lot of things by photos that people submit. So take good photos. Also, for identification, but also helps us see how severe an issue it might be. Also, just exactly where it's occurring. It might be lake wide, or it might just be in a certain little bay. So having that information is really helpful. Here's an example from a report from Charleston Day use area at Deer Creek Reservoir. And it looks like a pretty good bloom there. But we took here, there's a picture showing a landscape view. So kind of the extent of what we can see, how far, it looks like that bloom's reaching fairly far out. So we can get that information from there. And then up in the top right, it is the close-up. So we can get a little bit better, tell that it's a pretty dense bloom. And also this other picture shows kind of that bloom in the water column. And again, there's a latitude and longitude, but just any descriptors, whatever you can share to specify exactly where you are seeing that. Additionally, you guys are now, the more you know, the more you're able to share. So you can share this information with your friends and your family so that they're more informed and they can share it with others. Or if you're out sampling, often people are curious, and so you can share, what to look out for or what activities are safe to do or not. So all this information is so great, and we really appreciate your help at the Division of Water Quality to share this information, and appreciate what you're able to do. And with that, I will turn it back to Sarah. And again, we really appreciate your assistance.
Thanks so much, Ellen. That was awesome and so helpful. And benthic is something that has come across our radar more too. And some volunteers with Utah Water Watch have already started asking questions about that. So just so that all of our volunteers know kind of where we all fit. Utah Water Watch volunteers, we want you to be empowered with this information. You're in the waters monthly. You're going to see things, of course, in some areas. And just making sure that you have a landscape shot and a close-up shot if you see something like that would be really helpful. If it's not at your normal watering site or monitoring site, that's great. We just want as many people as possible to know what we're looking for. And if you're a Utah Water Watch volunteer and it's at your site, you would put those pictures in your data entry for that month. If it's at a different site, then just go ahead and email those to me, and also follow the process that Ellen laid out of checking and seeing if there's already an advisory there, and then if not, also reporting through a report a bloom. Now, HAB Squad folks, you'll have specific sites, just like Utah Water Watch. You now have your own program project in SITSI. We just found that that's easier to put your entries in. We have a map there that will help us to assign people to sites. And then you'll go in once a week and put in your pictures, whether or not there's a HAB, we want to see it. Those are really helpful for comparison. And just give the other factors from your data sheet. You'll record your data while you're in the field on a data sheet, and then when you're back home, you can put it all into the project site. If you use the app, you can record things in the field, but just make sure that you have a good connection so that stuff truly uploads. So we just want everyone, we're grateful that Ellen would take the time to share this information. We get a lot of calls of people afraid, and we just want everyone who helps to monitor Utah waters to kind of understand what we're looking for and how to help. If you are a Utah Water Watch volunteer and you see a HAB at your site, please don't monitor that month. And we'll take a pause and decide what to do. But take your pictures, do your normal photo point shots that you always do, and anything else that you can record of conditions, but we wouldn't want you in the waters, obviously, at those times. So, and if it's something that recurs at your site, then we may look at having you move sites or get a new location to monitor. So thanks so much for all you do. You make a big difference in our health and our Utah waterways. And just email us at utahwaterwatch@gmail.com if you have any questions. Thanks.